What's up, everybody? Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. A very special episode. It's our first dipping of the toe into the mock draft game. We're going to do our own mock draft next week. Kyle's already super excited for that. I can tell.
It's overwhelming, dude. It's overwhelming.
But we are going to analyze other people's mocks, the industry standard. We were talking about before the show how there's like certain people that when they come out with mocks, then they influence everyone else's mock. And it's kind of like this trickle-down effect where a few people say something and then everyone else starts to fall in line. And so there's a few industry standards that, you pay attention to. And so we're going to analyze their mocks. Dane Brugler of The Athletic, Lance Zierlein of NFL.com, because Daniel Jeremiah hasn't had one in a few weeks. And then we're going to do the Mel Kiper, Field Yates, Franken mock that happened just the other day on ESPN. So those three mocks, we're going to go through each pick, what each of them had, and then we're going to say which is the best one. Which one would that team most want of the guys that are given to them? So we'll start right off the top. Tennessee Titans. No intro here. No first off the ball. Just straight into this mock. Tennessee Titans. No surprises here. Brugler, Zierlein, Kiper, Yates all went Cam Ward. We don't have to discuss it. It's going to happen. Can't wait to see what happens. All right, Cleveland Browns. Brugler goes Travis Hunter. Field Yates, Mel Kiper go Travis Hunter. But Lance Zierlein's going Abdul Carter. So still a little split here. We discussed this one, I think, on Tuesday, right? I think we both want Abdul Carter here.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, you got the best guy in the league opposite of where Abdul Carter would be lining up. You bring him in, and it makes your defense exponentially more dangerous. And so half of my argument is that Abdul Carter belongs in Cleveland and that rush group. And the other half of my argument is that Travis Hunter does not belong in Cleveland. And Travis Hunter belongs down the line here, and we're going to get to that very shortly.
No, I'm right there with you. It's just, yes, you need a weapon. And yes, I think like wide receiver might be qualified as a bigger need and all that. But just, I don't know if we've seen, I just can't remember the last time we've seen a duo that would look like Myles Garrett, Abdul Carter, right? Like, I don't know. I can't remember the last time. Like,
well, the last duo that strikes fear into me like this group would, and this group probably strikes more fear into me, Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, 2016, right?
They won a Super Bowl.
2016. Yes. That was the blueprint for it. Yes. And I often talk about blueprints historically in the offensive line and how these groups come together. I talk about New Orleans often with Jari Evans and Carl Nix and all these studs. Take a look at Denver back then. They had two of the best guys in the league rushing the passer opposite one another, and it ended up being a great investment. And I could see the same thing happening in Cleveland. If you got question marks in your quarterback room, let's just bleed these suckers out with our defensive prowess. Start there, build your team.
And then for the same token, obviously number 3 is the New York Giants. Brugler has Abdul Carter. Kiper Yates have Abdul Carter. And then Lance Zierlein has Travis Hunter. I think we're siding with Zierlein here. Like we just like that combo of Hunter Neighbors, Carter Garrett. That's it, those. Dude. It makes those units sick, right? You just get elite units.
Remember NBA Jam? There was 3 players on each of the teams. So like you pick the Bulls, and it's let's say, for example, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, and Luke Longley. You know, like you're looking to get your package deal, and whatever your star package is, offensively or defensively, and both these teams can get it if we go with Zierlein here at the 2.
All right. New England Patriots, a unanimous pick. This one surprises me a little that it's unanimous, but everyone, Brugler, Zierlein, Kiper Yates, Will Campbell of LSU, the offensive tackle. So no decision here. They're going Will Campbell. I wonder if do we think there's a chance it goes any other way on draft day? Or do we think this one's kind of
it
just
totally could go any other way, Mike. But at the end of the day, the lore of the New England Patriots is in their positional versatility on not only the defensive side of the ball, but clearly on the offensive side of the ball. If we've got 3 of the top mock drafters slotting Will Campbell in, there's a reason for that. And I think his blueprint is I can play tackle, I can play guard. Shit, if our center goes down, I'll probably be one of the best centers in the National Football League if you put me in there. So Mike Vrabel understands the the advantages of having this type of versatility on the defensive side of the ball. This is a guy that rushed the passer, played the run, and caught passes in the red zone, Mike Vrabel.
Yes.
He's like, give me the O-line version of myself.
No, I buy it. And to me, NFL readiness, he's probably more NFL ready than the other top tackles, right? Whether it's Kelvin Banks, whether it's Armand Membu, or obviously Josh Simmons, because he may not even play early on. So number 5, Jacksonville Jaguars. We have NFL.com and ESPN going Mason Graham, and then The Athletic going Ashton Genty. Woo! With Travis Etienne on the roster, already with gosh, I'm blanking on the other guy's name from Auburn on the roster at the running back position. Going Ashton Genty. I know that Pete Prisco floated this one out there the other day, though, that it's a possibility for them. Tank Bigsby, yikes. Which one do we like here better?
I have what is the word? What's the phrase people use when they're watching a TV show and there's two characters that meet each other and you're like, I see them hooking up? Shipping? I'm pitching.
Oh, shipping. There you go. Yes, that is it.
I haven't shipped Jags and Genty.
I think you knew that, and you just had to play dumb for a second. You had
to just. I was going to say pitching, like a sales pitch. Yeah. Well, I'm still making a sales pitch for Chip Kelly to inherit the talent of Ashton Genty in Las Vegas. So I'm going to have to roll with Zierlein, Kiper, and Yates and their Frank and Mock. I think any addition that you have to the defensive front, and you love Mason Graham, you're really high on him, that is really the anti-venom for a good offense, because even the Kansas City Chiefs going against that group, against the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl, they were just outmatched. You can never have enough talent on the defensive front, particularly these guys on rookie deals. You might get some really great years out of Mason Graham before he becomes relatively expensive. I think that's a good move.
Yeah, I love the Mason Graham fit. I'm leaning that. And James Gladstone, new GM, said, we didn't sign any defensive linemen because we're going to draft some defensive linemen and we want them to see the football field. Went out and said it in the press conference. So fully expect at number 5 that to be the case. All right, a couple more before we take a break here. Las Vegas Raiders. This one, a few different guys. We have Brugler going Mason Graham, Zierlein going Jalen Walker, and then the ESPN mock going Ashton Genty. I don't know. This one I had to debate a little bit in my head. What do you think?
Hey, look, nobody's going to be pissed off if Mason Graham or Jalen Walker are available and they end up going to the Las Vegas Raiders. They're good. They're great football players and, game-changing type talents. But so is Ashton Genty. And I know that there's a lot of talk oftentimes about, is this guy an example or an exception? Saquon Barkley is usually the exception to the rule at running back that can really change everything for your offense. But as we talked about yesterday, unless you've got that powerhouse of an offensive line, you're not going to be hitting those home runs that Philadelphia hits. Yeah, you can keep 4 to 6 yards in the clip in your running game with a great running back like Ashton Genty, which is why I agree with Ashton Genty going to the Las Vegas Raiders, particularly with the 2 tight end sets. The Chip's going to get into balanced formations, the do-it-all ability for Genty. I love this one there. But Mason's already off the board, and Jalen Walker's coming up for somebody else. So Ashton Genty, I've seen it. It's been written. The writing's on the wall for Ashton Genty to be in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I honestly probably would prefer Mason Graham of all these options. Obviously, may not even be an option for them, but I don't see the Jalen Walker fit at all, truthfully. You have Max Crosby, who's a Raider for life at this point. You drafted Tyree Wilson in the top 10 just a couple years ago. And you got Malcolm Kuntz, who was a budding edge rusher before he tore his ACL and missed all of last season. That's I don't want to say like no one's ever full up on the edge, right? You can always add more talent there. But I just think the path to him to see the football field right now is pretty slim pickings. So I'm going Mason Graham. Mason Graham, Christian Wilkins. That's a sick interior. You have a elite defensive line. Should you add Mason Graham to that? So that's where I would lean. Should it be a conversation? Should the Jaguars go Ashton Genty? So, all right, number 7, New York Jets. We got a consensus here. Brugler, Zierlein, ESPN, all going Armand Membu. And I've mocked this one myself. This one makes too much sense. You have a buddingly awesome offensive line at every single position but right tackle, right? It's like great. Big question mark. And here you have a guy here in Armand Membo who 3 years of right tackle at Mizzou, only played guard and right tackle in high school. Like he is slotted. Like you want him. If you have a right tackle need, this is the guy you want to draft.
This is your right tackle day one. And there's a reason it's a consensus at number 7 here. And there's a lot of people who like him more than Kelvin Banks. And we love Kelvin Banks. But Armand Membo plugged into that unit with that rushing attack, with having Justin Fields in the backfield. It's going to be a dangerous combination. And if this is the direction the Jets go, I think everybody would agree that it is the right move.
All right, number 8, Carolina Panthers. We have Brugler going Jalen Walker. We have ESPN going Jalen Walker. And we have Zierlein going Michael Williams. I'll just say this. I think we're going to both agree on the Jalen Walker fit because Michael Williams is like the Jadeveon Clowney for that. Like you already have a guy who you don't want dropping into coverage off the edge, right? And you have an interior now after signing Turk Wharton that's kind of full up, right? You have Turk Wharton. You have Bobby Brown to play nose tackle and Derek Brown to play nose tackle. Should he be back and fully healthy this year? Assume he will be. But it's like you run into the same problem with Michael Williams that he had at Georgia, where there's no great fit for him along that defensive line, whereas Jalen Walker is exactly what they're missing. Is like that true 3-4 outside linebacker, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you mentioned fit. And as you and I know, on the defensive side of the ball, fit is very important. And it's rare that guys have the ability to move around and play different positions. But if you're the Carolina Panthers, you are drooling at the opportunity to get either one of these guys on your roster, these defensive players, and Jalen Walker and Michael Williams. I think Jalen Walker is more of the game-changing type player for you. And to your point about his fit, I think it would work well in Carolina.
All right, on to the New Orleans Saints, where our first one where there's no even double up. It's all over the map here. We have Brugler going Tet McMillan, the Arizona wide receiver. We have Zierlein going Jihad Campbell, the Alabama linebacker. And then we got the ESPN mock. Well, Shedeur Sanders makes its first appearance here to the New Orleans Saints. What say you about this one?
I think Shedeur Sanders could be a lot of fun.
Okay.
I really do. And, you know, with all the stuff that's happened in New Orleans financially, it would be nice to kind of reset at the quarterback position and have your guy for the future and develop with your young head coach and have the ability to really nurture an offense that's tailor-made to a guy as opposed to trying to piecemeal things with the old regime. And stop me if I'm wrong, but I mean, Shedeur Sanders, it would be fun to watch him in New Orleans. I think he's a great culture fit. Obviously, New Orleans is a really unique city. Shedeur Sanders, a very unique guy, acquired taste. And as I said yesterday, I'm a big fan of him. And I think that New Orleans will be a great opportunity with that new regime.
I'm going to go different here. I think, and again, if they drafted Shedeur Sanders, quarterback scouting, like we don't know. And they're in a position where they obviously are going to need a quarterback in the future. So I'm never going to criticize someone too hard for drafting a quarterback top 10. The same way, like when Michael Penix got drafted last year, I was like, hey, we'll see. Like you just never know on these guys.
And then they had the shootout in the nation's capital with Michael Penix and Jaden Danielson. We were like, okay.
I thought you were going to say with Brian Robinson, unfortunately.
Brian Robinson. Right. What a badass, though.
Yeah, dude, right? But the thing about Saints is I think even if you draft Shedeur, you're not going to be good this year. And I'm looking at next year's quarterback class, and I'm looking at this roster. I'm like, if I start Shedeur Sanders for 17 games, I'm probably ending up with a top 5 to 10 pick again. Or if I start Spencer Rattler, I'm probably ending up with a top 5 to 10 pick again, unfortunately. That's the way this is kind of breaking for the New Orleans Saints and the situation they're in. And I like guys like Arch Manning next year. I like guys like, the LSU quarterback, who I'm blanking on, who I think his dad's the quarterback coach for the Saints. So there's a lot of tea leaves about next year's quarterback class. There's just a lot to like about next year's quarterback class that I'm passing this year. And I'm going of these guys, Tet McMillan. I don't see the Jihad Campbell logic at all. I'd much rather go Shedeur before Jihad Campbell because with New Orleans Saints, again, when you're in a bad cap situation, you have to find avenues to save money, right? To get back into the good graces of the cap.
So get the expensive players for cheap.
Boom, right there. Yes, because
linebackers are cheap. We can get them.
you could go out and sign an all-pro linebacker this past year for $17 million a year. Zach Ball, right?
You're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay Ted McMillan.
Yes.
So $38 million in 4 years.
100%.
That's if you're not franchise tagging him. And then he's making $39 million in the 5th year.
And then you have the thing of this receiving core is all speed guys. You don't have a single possession type of wide receiver. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks. They're tiny. They're thin.
0.
Now that's, you can create an offense out of that, but you're going to struggle on 3rd and 6s. You're going to struggle in certain situations. Ted McMillan is that guy to be kind of exactly what they need in those avenues. All right. We're going to take a quick break there. After that, as your top 9 picks, we're going to get to the rest, 10 to 32, right after this.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
All right, Chicago Bears. This one's becoming kind of, I don't want to say consensus, but there's a lot of smoke around Tyler Warren. We got Dane Brugler. We got ESPN going Tyler Warren. Then we got Zierlein going Genty. Obviously, Genty, the word is likely to be off the board. That's wishful
thinking there.
Yes.
That's wishful thinking, Lancer. Okay? You know what? Every Bears fan in the world would love to have an Ashton Genty. But as you and I have talked about, he's probably going to be gone. And Tyler Warren will be available. And I've heard Ben Johnson speak about Tyler Warren's value add to the offense, not just of the tight end position, but his versatility. And that's been really the theme of the draft is versatility, from the offensive line to the guys who are playing defense. And then now at the tight end position, this guy can line up for you in short yardage, goal line as the quarterback, the up back. We see a lot of that in Kansas City. Blake Bell would get under center. The Belldozer would happen. Travis Kelce direct snaps. We're going to see stuff like that in Chicago. I love Dane, Mel, and Field going with Tyler Warren here. I think it's a slam dunk, a home run, 2 tight end sets. It'll give Cole Kmet the opportunity to flourish and become the guy that everybody has wanted him to become. Big frame, great athlete, soft hands. Let's see it open up with a guy like Tyler Warren in that offense. And Caleb Williams, he benefits the most from that.
This is an interesting conversation because these are 2 positions that have, quote unquote, been devalued. Right, that in the draft, you have a conversation about, is it worth it to take one this highly? But the one thing that is vastly different about these 2 positions is career length. You draft a tight end and he turns into, an elite tight end, which if you draft him number 10 overall, that's what
you hope. Yeah.
His career length's 15 years. You draft an elite running back, his career length's 7 to 8, right? You're double the amount of time. Look at Travis Kelce. Look at Jason Witten. Look at Antonio Gates. Those guys are there for decade plus on your franchise. So that's something you got to weigh. And if you are, Ben Johnson, you just got to a new spot and you want to do the things he does offensively, Tyler Warren is like tailor-made for the Chicago Bears. So there's not a lot of teams where I'd probably say, yeah, definitely I'd go Warren over Genty, and go Warren this high.
Oh, you muted? Mike's muted. So he also really likes the Tyler Warren pick. And you just keep talking until I hear you, Mike. Go ahead.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, I think I bounced my mic off my computer. All right,
your twerk team over there under the desk. You got to relax talking about Tyler Warren, but I'm excited too. But collateral damage here.
Give you a little hype. All right. Number 11, San Francisco 49ers. We have Brugler going Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M defensive end. But then we got Zierlein and ESPN both going Kelvin Banks, the Texas offensive tackle. I'm assuming he slots in right away at left guard for them, where they don't really have anybody. I don't think you're kicking out Colton McKivitz to play him at right tackle. I think you're going left guard, left tackle of the future, similar to like when Laramie Tunsil got drafted for the Dolphins. Left guard to left tackle. I think that's your goal here if you're drafting Kelvin Banks. So which one do you think?
Best available offensive lineman. And you talked about guard. We've seen him at tackle. He's a fantastic player. He'll translate well. He's a surefire starter in the National Football League based on the film I've looked at of him. And for San Francisco, you just want to continue to bolster that offensive line. It's kind of been a staple there for over a decade. We've had big, strong tackle guys that play guard. We've got ass kickers at the tackle position that have the demeanor of guard. You're bringing a rookie last year with Dominic Puny. Let's just keep pouring into that bucket, because if you are going to make the move with Brock Purdy and spend all that money on Brock Purdy, then you better have invested in the offensive line, particularly in rookie contracts. Kelvin Banks gives you an opportunity to do that. And let's say you don't go with Brock Purdy and their move is elsewhere, then you better have a damn good foundation to your house, and it starts with the offensive line. So when that guy comes in, or if Brock Purdy stays, either way, he's got solid footing under him.
Yeah, I'm all in on Kelvin Banks here. I think this is my favorite fit for him in this draft. I think his floor is like here or the Dolphins. I was going to say Florida again, but I'd be floored if this isn't his floor, if he falls farther than 13, just given his tape, given his tools, and given the need and just nature of the offensive line position. So I got about a 20 or more spot difference on my draft board between Kelvin Banks and Shamar Stewart. So this one's a no-brainer for me. I'm leaning Kelvin Banks. All right, Dallas Cowboys, another unanimous one. Everyone going Matthew Golden, the Texas wide receiver here.
Let me just tell you what, the single digits, I spit on him a little bit as it pertains to interior defensive linemen yesterday. Like, if you got a bad body, don't wear it. I like the number 2 on this guy a lot. All right. And it would kind of be a theme in Dallas to have these skill guys be in single digit numbers. You could get that going. You could get that rolling. I think it would be sweet. Also, played in Austin, not too far from where the hell do they play? Where's Jerry's World? What's the exact town? It's not Dallas.
Frisco.
It's Frisco, Texas, which I always thought was just a smaller version of San Francisco. Turns out it's not. And it's in Texas, and the Cowboys play
Or is that where it is? Or is it in Arlington?
Arlington. Isn't that where the
I think
Rangers
their
have their
practice facility
beautiful?
might be.
I know Arlington is where the Rangers play. I would imagine
Yeah.
there would be another sports venue there. That would be where Jerry's World is.
AT&T
But yeah,
is
unanimous
Arlington.
decision here. Let's get a guy with a ton of skills and try to be able to score points. That's the name of the game. Obviously, they're going to be without Zach Martin. Tyron Smith is out of the NFL, and he wasn't there last year either. They've had to reshape what this offense looks like, and they should lean into the skill game.
I do not have Matthew Golden this high on my board, but I have no other choice. I'm going Matthew Golden in this mock. All right, Miami Dolphins 13, but he is more of a number 2. And again, you're going to a spot where that's great. You got a number 1, so
there's an obvious
desperately
number
need
1.
weapons. So it's like a beggars can't be choosers sort of situation for them. All right, Miami Dolphins. Brugler going Nick Manwari, the South Carolina safety. Zierlein going Kenneth Grant, the Michigan DT. And then ESPN's going Will Johnson, obviously off the backs of the Jalen Ramsey trade talk for the Dolphins. Which one do you like best?
Well, I've heard you talk about Nick Manwari a ton, and that's an interesting prospect. And I think Miami's kind of going for however we can help our defense the most pick. And it depends on what you want. Do you want to bolster that front 7? Do you want to get some help on the back end? And I think all these picks would be great, but I like the 2 first guys the most, Kenneth Grant and Nick Manwari. I'd be interested to hear what you say. I'd be interested to hear what Harry would say, our producer, as he is a massive Dolphins fan, and he runs the chat, the NFL on CBS chat during our stream. So I'm sure he's going to give me some feedback. They need defensive tackles. Will Johnson's too good to pass up. See, I think the defensive tackles things is great because if you're lacking on the back end, you could just plaster these guys at the line of scrimmage, fold the pocket. The ball's going to be bad, okay? It's the great equalizer. It's a great pass rush, a great run defense. There's no complaints from me ever going with the best defensive player, interior guy possible.
To me, between these 3, I'd probably go Will Johnson too. He's the highest on my board. And I'm just looking at this roster. Should they trade Jalen Ramsey away and not get, obviously a player in return? I doubt if they did. This might be the worst defense in the NFL. And it's tough to say, but like their secondary on paper right now, Cam Smith, Storm Duck, Kader Kohu, Ifeatu Melifonwu, and Ashton Davis. It's not good. And their defensive line, the interior defensive line, obviously, Zach Sealer, Benito Jones, Neil Farrell. That ain't too good. Like there's just they can throw a dart and hit a need on this defense. So it really is best defensive player available. And since I have Will Johnson the highest, I'm going to like Will Johnson. But again, there's so many, unfortunately, the way this roster's gone, it might be tough before it gets better in Miami here. All right, on to the Colts, number 14 overall, where we got a common theme here. Brugler going Colson Loveland, Kiper Yates going Colson Loveland, and Lance Zierlein going Tyler Warren. They think they need a tight end. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, what's the best way to help a young quarterback? Put somebody right in front of him who can run sideline to sideline with him when he's breaking contained, that you can consider to be a surefire target, a layup, as it were, in basketball. You said that everything that I said about Tyler Warren, in your opinion, there's some skill sets that Colston Loveland is more advanced in and has some more abilities. And I feel like when you're trying to really put a pacifier in your quarterback's mouth, the best way to do it is one of these super skilled do-it-all tight ends. And obviously Zierlein has Tyler Warren. Brugler and Kiper Yates have Loveland. I think if Warren's gone at 10, then obviously the next pick is going to be Colston Loveland.
I prefer Loveland of the two. So I'm going to prefer Loveland for the Colts. I don't think there's too much debate, too much more to say about it like that. I just think he's the more complete wide receiver. And I think for that offense, now it's not necessarily where I go on my board right now, given like what they have, but I mean, with the weapons they now have, if you had Colston Loveland to that offense, if Anthony Richardson doesn't succeed, at that point, because it's a stacked receiving core there in Indy. All right, Atlanta Falcons, number 15 overall. Brugler going Mike Green. ESPN going Mike Green, the Marshall defensive end. Lance Zierlein going Will Johnson, the Michigan corner. I like Mike Green. I love this Mike to Green. This to me feels like pass. I don't want to say pass rusher only. You never pigeonhole yourself into one spot as a team, but it's such a good class. The need is so great that I would be floored if they did not go on the edge. And, Will Johnson, corner is a need too, but it just feels like edge and pass rush have been a need for so long that I'm just going to lean there in this class. Find that cornerback later. Give me Mike Green.
Yeah, they reached last year to get an edge rusher, and they didn't get a lot of production out of him. I'm not talking about the draft. I'm talking about in the offseason. And you have to find a guy that can rush and get home. And Mike Green, from the great state of Virginia, so he's going to be a baller. He will benefit from having all those weapons on that offensive side of the ball that we've fallen in love with. Darnell Mooney. What's the big receiver's name? Drake London. Michael Penix is going to be throwing that thing all over the yard. Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, they're going to give you opportunities to rush the passer. For the Falcons, they didn't have that guy who could get home at the edge rush position. Bring Mike Green in. I love this one.
All right, Arizona Cardinals at 16. You got three different guys here. Brugler going Michael Williams, the Georgia edge. Zierlein going Tyler Booker, the Alabama guard. And then ESPN goes Jahdae Barron, the Texas corner. Now, this is an interesting one because these three guys on my board are within like 6 spots. So it's really to the point where probably going to lean when it's that close. I'd probably lean for like, what's the biggest need? Where's the biggest impact going to be made? Who can see the field quicker? That sort of thing. To me, man, I don't think I would go Michael Williams. I think they've done enough at edge, whether it's Darius Robinson last year, whether it's Baron Browning, whether it's Zaven Collins kind of looking all right as an edge rusher. Like they have guys now, and then they signed Josh Sweat in the offseason. So it's like, that's not where their needs lie anymore. The needs are on the interior. I'm surprised no one went defensive tackle at this point with Derek Harmon on the board for a lot of these guys. So then after that, I'm thinking, yeah, you could add to the secondary, but they're all so young already. You've drafted a lot of guys in the top 3 rounds over the past couple seasons that I'm not sure they're going to look to add this early. Now, Jahdae Barron's probably, my eval on him is better than the eval I had on all the other guys they drafted coming out, right? And it's obviously still a point of contention, but I might look guard here. I might be leaning Tyler Booker to add to this offensive line because for better or worse, you are all in on Kyler Murray, right? And I think there are offenses where Kyler Murray can lead you to an elite level. Shoot, we saw it with Cliff Kingsbury at one point in time. Guy was like we're over halfway through the season. He was the front runner for MVP. So we've seen it before, and they have it in their offensive, their receiver room, and like with tight end too. If you throw Trey McBride in there, like they have the weapons to do it. Just give them the offensive line now. So I think I lean Tyler Booker here.
You mentioned defensive line as a need for this team, and they did a good job of addressing that. And I'm surefire going to see some day 2 guys, day 3 guys for the Arizona Cardinals that are on the defensive line. But I think to your point about Tyler Booker plugging in at this offensive line, it makes me want to point out how your offense looks when you've got a guy like Kyler Murray and you have the ability to threaten teams on the edge with Kyler Murray's legs and his arm. You add Tyler Booker in there, and you have an offensive line that's ready to give you that nasty run game early and often. It will give you that suck on the second level, which is, when I say suck, I mean the respect of that second level. When you go to hand the football off or give a play action, their eyes live in the backfield. The defensive linemen are playing run because they've seen run time and time again. That's when Kyler Murray could slip out, make those big plays down the field or with his legs. I love Tyler Booker. You're never going wrong going offensive lineman, but the Jahdae Barron pick would also be interesting because never leave a team without corners.
Yeah, and then I just love the idea of Paris Johnson, Tyler Booker on the left side. I love when you compare 2 elite guys next to each other, because a lot of runs, say you run counter left, right? Power left. It's basically predicated on that double team. That double team hits, you got a positive play more often than not. And so if you have 2 elite guys next to each other, you can scheme it up to where you're favoring that.
It could be a legendary deuce block.
Yes. There you go. All right. Cincinnati Bengals at 17. We got 3 different guys. Same theme, defensive line. Dane Brugler going Derek Harmon. Lance Zierlein going Mike Green. And then ESPN going Walter Nolan, the Ole Miss defensive tackle. Is this the first sighting of Derek Harmon on this list? Oregon defensive tackle? I'm just going to say it right here. I have Derek Harmon as the 9th overall player on my draft board. I'm finalizing it today, but he's number 9. I think he's exceptional. I think it's a massive need for the Cincinnati Bengals. So pretty much anytime Derek Harmon's going to get drafted after this, because he's the first time I've seen him, I'm probably going to lean Derek Harmon. I think he's going to be an awesome player. So that's going to be my take. I'd like to hear yours.
I forget who we were watching yesterday with Mitch Morse at the studio, and they were playing against Derek
Marcus
Harmon.
Bowe.
Okay. So we were watching the Purdue tackle. They were playing Oregon, right?
Yes.
They played Oregon, and I couldn't keep my eyes off Derek Harmon. Even when he wasn't making plays, he was preventing offensive linemen from making explosive blocks. He was standing tall in the trenches against double teams, battling in the pass rush department. And when I think about the Cincinnati Bengals, I just think about how inept they are on the defensive side of the ball and how they've become a paper mache Bengal on the defensive side of the ball. I remember when Lou Anarumo had this group rolling, and they had great guys on the second level or the third level of the defense, and they had pass rushers on both sides, and they had a good defensive interior part of their line. You start from the inside, you build it out. Go get Derek Harmon on that football team, and the rest will kind of take care of itself.
And to me, when I'm scouting in the trenches, there is something to it, and you're a great example of this. How weight looks on a guy. You were 320 and you look like you couldn't have been 280 if you tried, right? You just are a big boned human being. Derek Harmon is a massively boned human. He is just a large man. And so like the weight on him does not look like fat. It's not look like it's hanging off him poorly. He is just a well put together 315 pounds. And that matters to me when I'm scouting defensive linemen. It's not the end all be all. If you have a bad body and you can still play, you can still play. But more often than not, the elite guys, the guys that really got it, they look like that. Derek Harmon, dude, I think he's going to be a stud. So I am a fan of that fit. My buddy Jim, massive Bengals fan, texts me all the time about Derek Harmon. He's like, that's the dream fit. That's the dream fit.
That's the guy.
I think it is. All right, Seattle Seahawks. Interesting one here. This is the highest I've seen him. Gray Zabel.
Love this.
Dane Brugler has them going Gray Zabel. Mel Kiper and Field Yates have them going Gray Zabel. The North Dakota State offensive lineman. Now, obviously, he was a tackle at North Dakota State. I think you're slotting him here at either guard or center. You drafted Christian Haynes in the 3rd last year. You're hoping he takes a step forward into a starting role this year. But Zabel obviously fills a huge, huge need. And Zierlein going Tet McMillan. And as much as I love Tet McMillan, and I have him much higher on my board, I don't know if I love the fit here just because you already have one of the slowest receiving cores in the NFL.
Don't make it slower.
If your starting three is Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Tet McMillan, T-Mac. I just got to stop calling him Tet. He said no one calls him Tet, but it's T-Mac.
T-Mac.
Your fastest guy runs a 4.55. You know, like you are slow, and that, as much as you know they're all good receivers, you just don't have the threat of speed, and so that just condenses how defenses play against you. So I'll probably lean Gray Zabel for them, even if again I have T-Mac. Yeah, stop saying Ted. A lot higher.
I love Gray Zabel here, and it makes me realize something about John Schneider. He's changed his tune. If he does go with Gray Zabel,
he does.
Because what has he said? You know, I'm going to try to find the exact quote here while I'm talking about this, but there's a handful of GMs who really have a soft spot for offensive linemen, particularly guards. So John Schneider has been quoted as saying, I don't really think there's tons of value in that position. Well, he obviously has turned on the tape in Seattle, and he also realizes that maybe they didn't upgrade at the quarterback position, and they're going to have to do whatever they can do to bolster the offensive line. Gray Zabel's the guy we've talked about ad nauseum, plays the game the right way, can play any position. Showed up at the Senior Bowl and just played everything and did it well. So whatever need you have, he can fill it. You can try him at a number of different spots. Whatever progress or lack of progress you've made in that room as it pertains to the other players, he can fill a need. And I believe in that, in his ability to do that.
All right, Tampa Bay Bucks at 19. 3 different guys here. Brugler going Jihad Campbell, the Bama linebacker. Zierlein going Shamar Stewart, the Texas A&M defensive end. And then ESPN going Nick Emanwari, the South Carolina safety. I'm going Jihad Campbell here. Yeah, this is his fit. This is it, him going to that defense. Obviously, it's like a massive need outside, Servassier, Dennis, Levante David, your starting linebackers. But Todd Bowles wants to blitz. Jihad Campbell is a glorified edge rusher in his skill set, in what he's capable of doing as a pass rusher. That's what you want when you're going to blitz the guys as much as Todd Bowles is going to blitz his linebackers. You want a Jihad Campbell. The value starts to tip in favor of a linebacker, then, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you get to learn from one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah.
If you say that he's a glorified edge rusher, well, he will learn how to play off-ball linebacker the right way from the people in that room. So I think it is obviously a need for the team, and for Jihad Campbell, it doesn't get much better than ending up in a room with a guy like Levante David.
All right, Denver Broncos. We got a unanimous one here at number 20.
This is the quickest one we should do.
North Carolina running back. Need, fit, great player. Next one, 21, Pittsburgh Steelers. Here's where Derek Harmon's coming off the board. We have so Zierlein did a trade. He actually has the Steelers trading back to 26. So at 26, they pick Jahdae Barron. So maybe not. So they go to 26 to pick Jahdae Barron. ESPN has them going Derek Harmon. Dane Brugler has them going Shedeur Sanders. I got to think about this one for a second. All right, so Jahdae, Derek Harmon, Shedeur Sanders.
I love this. If Shedeur's available, I love Shedeur to Pittsburgh, because just like that culture in New Orleans and how they'd have a different appreciation for a guy like Shedeur, I just feel like Mike Tomlin would protect him like one of his own, and he would do his part in making sure that he can stick the landing in Pittsburgh. And what do they need? What have they been begging for in Pittsburgh? A quarterback. Well, you go and get a guy like that people believe in. We saw the team rally around and believe in Justin Fields, but there was a ceiling to what he was able to accomplish. I would imagine that the ceiling in terms of production is higher with Shedeur Sanders, and that's all they need in Pittsburgh. They don't need it much higher. They just need somebody who can keep them afloat offensively, keep the ball moving. But yeah, Derek Harmon would be one of those picks where it just fits the MO of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's just get as many badasses as we can and put them up front.
I lied. I misread it. Zierlein has them trading back to 26, and that 26 going Derek Harmon. Jahdae Barron going to the Rams then. So I'm going Derek Harmon. he feels like, I mean, he's going to the guy who's one of the ultimate put together, couldn't be any lighter. Cam Hayward is a guy who just like what was born and was going to be 315 pounds, just like he had to be. That guy is not carrying an ounce of extra weight on him. Derek Harmon fits that bill. He is your Steelers defensive tackle. So I'm leaning Derek Harmon. All right, Los Angeles Chargers at 22. The options, we got 3 different ones. Brugler going Kenneth Grant, Michigan DT. Zierlein going Colson Loveland, the Michigan tight end. And then Kiper, Yates going Emeka Egbuka, the Ohio State wide receiver. I love Colson Loveland here, man. I just love it. I've said it before. I will keep mocking it until draft day. Colson Loveland makes too much sense for the Los Angeles Chargers. That's my fit.
Obviously, if Loveland's available, it's a slam dunk home run. 2 Michigan men living in a van down by the Pacific Ocean. Be a lot of fun. But I also think continuing to add at the receiver position in Los Angeles. I watched the Chargers play the Titans yesterday from like week 10. And man, oh man, Ladd McConkey can play. Think about how much better he'll be with another guy out there that you have to respect. And obviously they've got Palmer and Quentin Johnston, but you need another guy with real juice. And Emeka's got that. So I think it would be if Loveland's not available and he ends up in Indianapolis, like we've seen mocked, this would be the pick, in my opinion.
I will say all 3 of these guys, Grant, Loveland, and Egbuka, those are the needs for this roster. You need a DT. You need a reliable wide receiver. And you could use a playmaking tight end. So I think all 3 fit. I'm just going to lean Loveland. All right, we broke before we went to your Bears. We're going to break before we get to my Packers. And we could come back and finish the rest of this mock eval.
One of golf's elite courses, Quail Hollow, hosts the game's top players at the PGA Championship this May on CBS.
All right, Green Bay Packers. Dane Brugler has them going Will Johnson, Michigan corner. Lance Zierlein going Savone Revel Jr., the ECU corner. And ESPN has them going Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M defensive end. Would fit their MO. Obviously, they've pretty much every edge they've drafted in the first round, Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, are scouting reports read very similarly.
Monsters.
Yeah, their scouting reports read very similarly. Honestly, if you read them out, I'm not sure you'd be able to discern from them. So if he's on the board there, I would be surprised if they don't pick him. I think they will pick him, but very well may not be on the board. I prefer Will Johnson. He's the highest on my board of these 3. I think he's the cleanest of these 3. He can play press in a way that I think fits what they want to do defensively. And, you know, they have Jair Alexander on the roster now. If you paired him with Jair Alexander, I'm not complaining. Like, even if you keep him on the roster, I think it's a position that you could address. So give me Will Johnson.
I really like the name Willie Johnson.
That feels like a 1970s baseball player.
Yeah. Like he had a giant glove. Just out there. Big glove. Pancake. Like right, it wasn't rounded, just a pancake glove. I like the idea of going secondary. You know, Hafley wants to be able to do multiple things in coverage. And to have a guy like that at the line of scrimmage, you can take away, you know, the alley, that part of the football field, and you can allocate your resources elsewhere. But that Kiper Yates pick with Shamar Stewart, I feel like it's right there with what the Packers have done. They get these guys who are extremely explosive off the line of scrimmage. And I remember when Rashawn Gary first came in the league, he was one of those guys where you watch come off the football and you go, my God, when he figures this thing out, we are all in big, big, big trouble. And it was the same conversation the offensive line had after the first time they saw a guy like Danielle Hunter in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. Just a specimen. And doesn't know what he's doing. A big Great Dane puppy dog out there. And if somebody gets their hands on him and shows him how to turn talent into, you know, production, you're looking at a home run for the Green Bay Packers.
All right, Minnesota Vikings. We have Zierlein trading them out of the first round entirely. So no pick there for them. So only 2 options. We got Dane Brugler going J.D. Barron, and then ESPN going Donovan Jackson. So a corner or a guard for the Vikings, because I think for the Vikings specifically, Donovan Jackson can play tackle. he will be playing left guard for the Minnesota Vikings. They have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL.
Donovan Jackson. Donovan Jackson's got to be the pick, in my opinion. You're bringing this young guy who looks like he plays lacrosse for Duke to play quarterback for you in J.J. McCarthy. And, we talk about the eyeball test, physical. We need bodyguards. We need people to come in and protect J.J. McCarthy and make his transition as a starter easier. Obviously, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can get him another receiver to that stacked room, or you can bring in a tight end, or you could bring in whatever the hell you want. But the best option to keep his vision clear and to keep his confidence high is to put a guy like Donovan Jackson in. You plug him in day one. You don't even look at him. You don't blink because that guy can play football.
I think within the first 2 rounds, they need to address left guard. If this were Gray Zabel here, between Jahdae Barron and Gray Zabel, I'd probably lean Zabel because I think the value makes sense. Donovan Jackson, I just have quite a bit lower on my board, where I think you're reaching if you're at 24 taking him. If you trade back, get Donovan Jackson. Yeah, like
you have a real need.
Yes, it's a need that needs to be addressed. But I look at this cornerback group and I'm like, this is a need that needs to be addressed too. You got Isaiah Rodgers, Jeff Okudah, Mekhi Blackmon as your outside corners right now, Dwight McGlothern. There are, maybe they bring back Stephon Gilmore. He's still a free agent. I think there's a good chance that they sign one regardless of what they do in the draft. But I'm going to lead Jahdae Barron. Versatile, physical. I think just for them right now, you got more picks in this draft. Go get a guard. Then Houston Texans up next. Number 25. 3 different guys here. Donovan Jackson from Lance Zierlein, who we just talked about, the Ohio State tackle/guard. Dane Brugler going Walter Nolan, Ole Miss DT, and then ESPN going Tet McMillan. T-Mac. Can't believe they had him falling to 25. I'll just say this. I'm not entertaining T-Mac here. I don't think it's possible he falls to 25. I'm not even going to put that as one. So Walter Nolan, Donovan Jackson. What do you think between those two?
The first thing I think is that Walter Nolan is also a single-digit guy on the interior part of the defensive line, but his body makes it okay.
Justifies it. He's lean.
Cougar, okay? He's a trim Ole Miss Reb. I like the looks of him, but, Donovan Jackson, you heard what I said about him and the impact he has on a quarterback. C.J. Stroud going into his 3rd year, he had a little bit of a letdown in the protection department. They got rid of Laramie Tunsil. They spread some money around there. Why don't you bring in another guy to kind of reset the floor for Houston's offense? I think that you can never go wrong picking these offensive linemen. Tet McMillan, or T-Mac, rather, not going to be available. Walter Nolan, wouldn't be mad about that either.
Walter Nolan to the Texans is one of my favorite fits this draft. I think that's just what the doctor ordered. I think that's how you take this defensive line. That was very good last year. Your edge duo at worst is the top 3 duo in the NFL, but they just had nothing on the interior, nothing to complement it. No way to push guys into Dale Hunter's arms, into Will Anderson's arms. So give me Walter Nolan, heck of an athlete. And kind of like, yeah, they need offensive line. I'm not going to sugarcoat that it's a bad unit still. But they have a lot of guys at this point in time to where if they don't draft one single offensive lineman in this draft, which again, I think would be malpractice, but if they don't draft a single one, they have starters. You got Cam Robinson. Your starting lineup would be something like Cam Robinson, Titus Howard, or maybe Lake and Tomlinson, and then either Juice Scruggs or Jarrett Patterson at center, right guard, maybe Ed Ingram or Titus Howard, Blake Fisher at right tackle. You sign Trent Brown too. Like there's a lot of players there now. Obviously, you got to squint to find one where you're like, he's a good player. But there's a lot of players that are drafted highly or signed to give a lot of money to. So that's kind of how I feel about the Houston Texans.
I'm looking at Walter Nolan's high school pictures. He wore number 1 at Powell.
It was 5-star.
Number 1 defensive line recruit. But maybe he wears single digit in Houston. Can we bet on that?
I bet he's
Can we bet on like wherever he goes? This is a guy that's going to wear single digit. Can I make money?
This is what FanDuel needs to be. These are the real draft props we want. Will he wear single digits in the league?
That's interesting.
I wonder what odds you could even put on that. All right, 26, Los Angeles Rams. Our first sighting of Josh Connerly the Oregon offensive tackle. Dane Brugler has him going there. We had the trade up for the Rams earlier to number 21 to get Jahdae Barron, Texas corner. And we had Maxwell Hairston here in the ESPN mock, the Kentucky corner. First sighting for him as well. Which one's your favorite? And I think I have an inkling of where you're going to go here.
Well, obviously, I like Josh Connerly, and to keep things on the
what
West Coast, it would be nice. But this guy, Maxwell Harrison, good-looking athlete. I'm sure you've taken a look at him more than I have. But like I said, never leave a team without corners, and they've got some youth in the secondary there. And we saw some guys make some big plays last year in big spots. But what you need is that floor to be higher, and you bring a guy like Maxwell Harrison in, and it could really raise that floor for your defense, your secondary.
I'll just say this. I think the Rams, I know they're one of the most analytically driven teams. They're one of the most forward-thinking teams in the NFL. I think there's a reason why their secondary has almost no draft capital allotted to it. You don't have a guy in there that was drafted on day 1 or day 2. It's just in that cornerback group. Your earliest one, Cam Kinchins at safety, was a back end of the 3rd round guy. They are not a team. They are going to address the trenches, the guys that they know that are difficult to find later on when they know they can find corners later on. And the way they set up that defense is to minimize the impact of corners. They're playing like this such soft zone off coverage stuff that basically turns your corners into
safeties,
guys who are covering as much ground as linebackers, right? Yeah. Safeties. So from that perspective, I lean Connerly because those are the guys that are harder to find. The big athletes who can play offensive tackle, who can play up front. And I think the Rams will too. I just don't see them trading up for a corner in Jahdae Barron. And I think if they do draft a corner, it's the 3rd round. I don't think it's round 1. All right, Baltimore Ravens. 3 different guys here. We have Brugler having Kelvin Banks fall all the way to here, the Texas offensive tackle again. I don't know if I can even entertain that. I don't think it's possible that he falls to 27, but crazier things, I guess, have happened. Lance Zierlein, Nicky Manwari, the South Carolina safety. Oh, my gosh. I haven't even thought about that fit yet, but I am starting to get kind of obsessed with it. Mel Kiper, Field Yates going Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety. First sighting from him. Which one do you like the most here?
I love Malachi Starks, but Nick Manwari would be a lot of fun. I just feel like either Starks or Manwari would be good fits. And they both have names that I feel like would look and sound good at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore come around November, making plays with that defense, that star power. You add to the star power of that defense, good things will happen. You make your strengths even stronger.
Everyone's kind of like called the Manwari like a Kyle Hamilton light. And everyone's like, wants to find a Kyle Hamilton. Well, shoot, why don't you put him in the same secondary as Kyle Hamilton?
Just get 2 of them.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I have Starks higher. I have him as my safety 1. But for the Baltimore Ravens specifically, again, like I love elite units. I love freaky units. I love getting a unit that can dictate terms on the defensive side of the ball because that's, I think, changes what offenses have to do. If you have Nick Manwari and Kyle Hamilton on the back end, like you can dictate terms. You can do things defensively that are scary to think about. So give me Nick Manwari. Detroit Lions. 3 different guys here. Brugler going Maxwell Harrison, Kentucky corner. Zierlein going Josh Connerly, Oregon offensive lineman. And then Kiper Yates going Michael Williams, the Georgia defensive end. Not a lot of needs. So all 3 guys. I think corner, though, they just drafted a bunch last year, right? Terrion Arnold, Enos Radkestraw. Back-to-back years going first-round corner after spending as much capital as they did last year on it. I think I'm looking elsewhere. And I'm looking at Josh Connerly Jr. I love Michael Williams, too. I don't think you could go wrong with either. But left guard, to me, still qualifies as a need. I know Graham Glasgow is kind of on his last rope here, and he was rated the weak link last season. I love what I saw from Christian Mahogany. I think he's going to be a long-term starter for them. Throw in one more piece, one more first-rounder, and just keep that offensive line train humming for the foreseeable future.
Oregon Duck. Throw him with another Oregon Duck, just like the Kyle Hamilton conversation. Go find another archetype like that. Well, go put 2 badass Oregon Ducks in the same room. Watch what happens, man. Okay? Ducks fly together, bro.
Yeah. Too bad. Maybe they go out and sign a former Oregon Duck.
Because look, the strength of that team has been the offensive line. It's what we rave about. Guys who are calling the games, they just circle that O-line, circle the O-line, circle the O-line. To your point, Glasgow on the way out, bring a guy in who can play either of those positions at the drop of a hat, can fill in a tackle, can fill in a guard.
Yes. And that's the other thing is Taylor Decker is going into season 10, right? So how many more does he have? TBD. If you get a guy like Connerly, the same thing. He's left guard now. He's left tackle later. Profit. Commanders. 4 more picks to go here. Emeka Egbuka, Ohio State wide receiver. Dane Brugler has that. Zierlein has going Trey Amos, Ole Miss corner, and then ESPN trade out of the first round entirely. Obviously, we're not going to entertain that one.
I love
Trey
that
Amos or Emeka Egbuka. You like that one?
Well, I've often said Lake Erie is where quarterbacks go to die. And Lake Erie is where the city of Cleveland sits upon.
Yeah. And so you have the Browns coming up to take Jackson Dart there.
I also saw in one of my predictions this offseason, the Jackson Dart would lead his team to a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. And this would be unbelievably unrealistic. So let's go Jackson Dart getting traded to the Browns.
All right. I like Egbuka here. I think just a solid number 2, reliable guy who blocks in the running game. I like that fit. Corner's probably a need.
I just don't want to see Jaden Daniels with more weapons, man. Okay. I met Terry McLaurin last week. Might have been the nicest guy I've ever met. Most easy to talk to. I'm like, some things are just unfair. Jaden Daniels, that's unfair. It should be cheating. Terry McLaurin, you shouldn't be able to be that good of a guy and be that great at football. You throw Emeka in there, and it's just, they're spoiled. They've got, a number of guys coming in. Laramie Tunsil. Come on.
Yeah.
You're going to make me root for the damn Commanders.
Buffalo Bills here. Brugler has him going Malachi Starks. Zierlein has him going Donovan Ezeraku. First Donovan Ezeraku citing the BC edge. And then ESPN has him going Trey Amos, the Ole Miss cornerback. I love Malachi Starks here. He is very high on my board. He's going to be a top 20 player for me. None of those other guys even close. None of those other guys are even going to be top 30 players for me. So when that's the case, it's a need. It's a fit. He's a heck of a player. And he could even play. I mean, this guy can play all over. I think he could play corner in the league if he wanted to. So for all those reasons, give me Malachi.
I'm in agreement with you here. Buffalo needs versatility weapons on defense. They've struggled in the pass rush department. They've lacked in star power on the back end. Let's bring a guy in who's an immediate fit that can improve our defense.
All right, Chiefs at 31. They're going to put you in a pickle here and make you, what's it, Sophie's choice? You're going to have to choose.
I'm going to choose.
Dane Brugler and Lance Zierlein have him going Josh Simmons, the Ohio State offensive tackle, who obviously has the injury red flag. But then ESPN has him going Josh Connerly, your boy from Oregon. So
Josh Connerly's already gone. He's already a Detroit Lion. I'm already on the Fanatec Fanatics website.
Oh, that's how you're going to deal with it. So you're going to say it's not possible. He's gone.
Well, you've heard me say this about Josh Simmons. If he's healthy, I think he could be the best guy in the draft.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, this could be one of those steals. And it seems a bit perfect to see him with the Kansas City Chiefs, because I was there when there was a young man from the University of Tennessee who had a heart condition that everybody red flagged and everybody said wasn't going to be able to play in the National Football League. And I was there when they drafted a left-handed center who's, part Native American from the state of Oklahoma. And they said, you guys are crazy. Lefty's never going to play center. Creed Humphrey, all pro. Trey Smith, all pro, Pro Bowl type. Bring in another guy that there's question marks about. Andy Heck's going to coach him up. Big Red's going to use him the right way. They're going to have him play the right position, whether it's guard, because you got Caliendo in there at left guard, or the tackle spot. But they just signed a tackle. So it'll be interesting to see how this thing ends up. But both tackles, there's question marks. Left guard, there's a question mark. Josh Simmons is a guy that can meet all those needs, in my opinion, if he is healthy. And if he's not healthy coming off the patellar, it could be a swing and a miss year one. But let that training staff with Julie Freimeyer and Rick Burkholder, the best trainers in the National Football League, let them work their little wizard and witch hands on Josh Simmons' knee. And Mahomes is safe, man.
I like Connerly better just because he can play right now. And again, the window is still right now. And he can play right now. and he fills in a left guard right now. So, and the other thing is, he's a year younger than Simmons. So the leap we saw from Simmons this year, maybe that was the leap we were going to see from Connerly next year if he stayed. I don't think, just from an athlete perspective, how they move, and just I don't see one ceiling being necessarily higher than the other. I think they both have sky high ceilings. So all that being said, prefer Connerly if he's on the board. If he's not on the board, I'd still take Simmons here. I think both are going to be darn good tackles, but again, Simmons has a little bit more of that risk associated. Philadelphia Eagles, last one here of the mock madness.
A trade has been submitted.
And this is the end. That concludes the first round. Philadelphia Eagles. Daniel Jeremiah has him trading out. So no pick there. And he has the Saints taking Jackson Dart. Everyone wants to come up and get Jackson Dart, apparently. Dane Brugler has them going Donovan Ezeraku, the BC edge.
Jackson Dart is nice, boy. Hey. That boy's
and then
nice.
ESPN has me going Jihad Campbell, the Alabama linebacker, which is a fit that I've said I loved.
Well,
Jihad
if he's there.
Yeah, he very well may not be there. But Jihad, whatever, you could say Eagles don't draft linebackers this highly. They very well may not. But Jihad and Zach Bond for Vic Fangio's defense. That's that could be.
Roquan, Danny Trevathan was the last duo that
yeah,
Vic Fangio
and just
had.
from a
I
talent
believe it was
perspective.
Roquan and Danny Trevathan with Khalil Mack, Akeem Hicks. It's a lot like what we have in Philadelphia.
I was thinking a little higher. I was thinking Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman.
Well, that was before. Before our Jets' time. Okay, that was before. That was the land before time.
But these are two guys that are high-end blitzers, high-end block defeaters, shall we say, and just have size to make difficult those lanes over the middle of the football field that, they're playing a lot of zone coverage in that Vic Fangio defense. They ask them to cover a lot of ground. These guys can do it. So, yeah, give me Jihad Campbell there.
Jihad Campbell, this guy is so big and so built for football. It's impressive. A lot of times linebackers are born, and when I say linebackers are born, I mean their mentality. Guys like Matt Milano or Roquan Smith, these guys aren't the biggest dudes on the field. They're not the most jacked human beings. If you saw them at the bar, you'd be like, I bet that guy was an athlete. You're not like, that guy's a superhuman. Jihad Campbell has that physique where it's like, holy shit, can he actually play? Because he looks like he can play, and he can. Yes. Vic Fangio would have a field day with him.
Yes, I love that fit. All right, that concludes the first round mock. I just saw on my phone here, Lee Corso retired from ESPN. Oh, congrats to Lee. I actually saw him at a golf course down in Florida a few years ago. It was time. It was actually not time. It was probably 5 years too late. Let's be real. But
what in your life has been a staple like Lee Corso?
Oh, dude, I mean, I'm trying to think what else.
Like string cheese and Lee Corso, the two things I've enjoyed since I was able to eat solids.
Mel Kiper's right there, right? Kiper in the draft. He is that for that. But Lee was a legend. Sad to see him go, but again, everything good must end. He was
obviously he's a great human, because the way that Kirk Herbstreit has taken care of him, and the cast of college football, College Game Day, the way that they take care of Lee Corso is one of the cutest things you'll ever see. It makes my heart just swell up to know that there's still good folks out there that are taking care of the elderly, because Lee Corso, let's face it, he's been elderly for quite some time, and kudos to him for a legendary career. Somebody that was entertaining every single time he went on the television, from putting on the mascot helmets to singing the fight songs to calling the little kid a little person. Do you remember that clip? That was
when he choked the goose. When
he's ridiculous.
Duck
I hope he finds a nice lazy boy to hang out on and watch some ball.
He's the man. That's our show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back with our own mock on Monday, the official Pushing the Pile first round mock. Until then, keep pushing.